He was Queen of France, the beacon of European luxury. Within 3 years, she was logged as Widow Capet, a name stripped of all dignity. Imagine the air in that stone cell, cold, damp, heavy with the scent of unwashed straw and impending doom. Her final days were not merely imprisonment, they were a calculated erasure of identity, a cruelty designed to break the spirit before the body. The guards never spoke, but their constant, unblinking presence was louder than any screaming mob. You stand in the Tuileries Palace, not in 1789, but on a scorching August morning in 1792. The stillness of the royal apartments is shattered by the insistent, metallic clang of alarm bells ringing across Paris. This sound is not merely a warning, it is the death knell of a 1,000-year monarchy. Outside, a restless sea of armed citizens and National Guardsmen, yesterday's subjects, surges toward the gates, driven by famine and fury. For Marie Antoinette, this moment signifies the ultimate, irreversible fracture of her sovereign self, the collapse of the world constructed around divine right and gilded privilege. The palace, after the failed flight to Varennes, had become nothing more than a magnificent cage. Philippines, the failed escape attempt in June 1791, had burned away the last remnants of trust between the king and the revolutionary populace. The enmity intensified, focusing its white-hot rage squarely on the queen, the foreign-born Austrian whose very existence was weaponized by pamphleteers. She was ridiculed as Madame Deficit, a symbol of internal decay and betrayal, her every move scrutinized through the lens of political suspicion. Now, as the mob reached the inner courtyards, the loyal Swiss guards held their ground, their fixed bayonets glittering under the weak morning sun. Flooring Louis XVI, paralyzed by indecision, refused to authorize the defense that might have saved the day, perhaps even saved the throne. Instead, he led his family through the sprawling palace gardens, seeking a fragile sanctuary within the Legislative Assembly building nearby. You watch the royal party recede, a slow, defeated procession toward inevitable condemnation. The palace, abandoned to the swelling revolutionary tide, was swiftly overrun, leading to a purge where hundreds, including dozens of the devoted royal guard, met a tragic end. By the end of that day, the constitutional monarchy was suspended. The royal family, no longer monarchs, were escorted under heavy guard to the temple, a looming medieval fortress that served as their new, severe residence. The transformation was complete. Queen of France became political captive. In the chillingly official language of the Revolution, she was no longer addressed by any royal designation, but simply as the Widow Capet, even while her husband still drew breath. She would never again know the velvet repose of a palace. The true descent began on the night of August 2, 1793. Officials of the Paris Commune arrived at the temple, their presence heavy and unyielding, to inform the former queen of her immediate transfer. Under the cover of the pre-dawn darkness, she was silently moved to the Conciergerie, the infamous prison situated on the Ile de la Cité, known chillingly as the Anteroom of the Guillotine. Provisional serve as a final, absolute severance. She was cut off completely from her surviving family. Her daughter, Madame Royale, later recalled in her memoirs the final embrace, her mother holding her without uttering a single syllable, acutely aware that every whisper was monitored and recorded. At the Conciergerie's grim registry, she was catalogued under the deliberately assigned, demeaning name, Widow Capet, a final revolutionary act to strip away her identity. You are now ushered into her cell within the women's section, positioned directly above the river's damp currents. Historical blueprints confirm the terrifying intimacy of the space, perhaps 10 feet by 7, enclosed by thick stone and iron bars, pierced only by one narrow, insufficient window. Early accounts from prison reformers, like Jacques-Pierre Brissot, depict these women's quarters as perpetually cold, infested with parasites and rats, and saturated with overwhelming humidity. Initially, she was afforded no proper bed, forced to sleep upon a meager pile of straw. But the cruelty was meticulous and strategic. A decree issued on August 5, 1793, mandated her constant, unremitting surveillance. 2 gendarmes were permanently stationed within the confines of the cell, instructed never to turn away, even when she attempted the smallest private act. such as changing clothes or washing. This relentless exposure was designed to shatter her dignity. An officer, Jean-Baptiste Michoni, admitted in his tribunal testimony that she possessed zero privacy. A physician, whose reports are preserved in the Parisian Revolutionary Archives, noted the former queen's severe physical decline, signs of internal distress, dramatic weight loss, and crippling exhaustion. Access to medical aid was strictly rationed and severely limited. By late September, the transformation in her appearance was shocking. Witnesses, including diplomats like Lord Gower, reported that her once golden hair had turned entirely white under the duress of captivity. In a final, desperate gesture of silent resistance, Marie Antoinette attempted to smuggle a note to her sister-in-law, Madame Elisabeth. The letter, a relic of profound despair now held in the Archives Nationales, was intercepted and never delivered. In that aborted correspondence, the former queen wrote with devastating simplicity, "I have nothing more to hope for in this world." The psychological torment of constant monitoring, the deliberate physical degradation, and the systematic isolation had done their intended work. What followed was the staged spectacle meant to justify the entire revolution, the process of public condemnation. Marie Antoinette's appearance before the Revolutionary Tribunal began on the morning of October 14, 1793, within the massive hall of the Conciergerie itself. Official proceedings, later published for revolutionary consumption, confirm the breadth of the charges against her, which extended far beyond mere treason and conspiracy with foreign powers. The most notorious and politically motivated charge was that of forbidden indulgence, incest, with her young son, the Dauphin Louis Charles. This horrifying accusation, extracted from the child during his separate captivity under duress, was considered so repugnant and baseless that even some of the revolution's key figures condemned it as a cynical political maneuver aimed solely at destroying her image. The proceedings were presided over by Antoine Quentin Fouquier-Tinville, the tribunal's public prosecutor, a man whose name was synonymous with the swift organization of state-sanctioned endings. The courtroom was a controlled environment, packed with armed guards, and a carefully curated audience loyal to the Jacobin cause. The atmosphere, as described by eyewitness reports passed to diplomats, was one of pure spectacle, devoid of true justice. Marie Antoinette entered wearing a plain black dress and a simple white bonnet, a muted shadow of her former grandeur. Journalists present noted her extreme pallor and deeply set eyes, yet conceded that she maintained an unbowed, upright posture throughout the ordeal. When questioned about her diplomatic correspondence, she denied any direct involvement in aggressive military strategy. When the prosecutor pressed the charge of incest, her response, as recorded in the official registry, was profoundly powerful in its brevity. She turned to the assembled crowd and declared, "I appeal to all mothers." The courtroom, even those hostile to her, reportedly fell into an unexpected, potent silence, the accusation momentarily collapsing under the weight of common human feeling. Testimonies were largely built upon distortion, rumor, and twisted interpretations of her private correspondence, much of it seized during the Tuileries collapse the previous year. Evidence presented, such as documents found in the armoire de fer, iron chest, hidden within the palace, was often ambiguous or unrelated directly to the treasonous acts alleged. The proceedings lasted 2 relentless days. The defense was minimal, with no opportunity provided to call counter-witnesses or introduce exculpatory evidence. Shortly after 4 a.m. on October 16th, the predetermined outcome arrived. The jury delivered the unanimous sentence of death by the guillotine. The former queen, exhibiting an almost unnatural reserve, showed no visible reaction as the verdict was read. Just a few hours later, around 7 a.m., the preparations began. Prison records and accounts from those present, including a young Marie Groschholz, later Madame Tussaud, confirm that she was permitted only to change into a plain, simple white shift. Unlike her husband, Louis XVI, who had been granted a closed carriage, she was denied that final small courtesy. Her hands were bound tightly behind her back, and she was forced into an open wooden execution cart, the type reserved for common criminals. The route from the Conciergerie to the Place de la Révolution was deliberately chosen for its visibility, intended to maximize the public viewing of the downfall. The slow, agonizing journey spanned over an hour, winding through the narrow, crowded Rue Saint-Honoré, lined with thousands of spectators who had gathered to witness the final hours of the Austrian. Police reports detail the somber procession. Gendarmerie, National Guard, and mounted troops flanking the cart like escorts of doom. One of the most powerful eyewitness reports comes from Jacques Roux, a radical revolutionary who observed the train and noted the former queen's unwavering demeanor. She maintained a still, upright posture, her gaze fixed straight ahead, refusing to meet the hostility of the surrounding faces. Tangled, her appearance was stark. Her white hair had been crudely shorn by the executioner's assistant, a standard, necessary preparation for the beheading. At the foot of the scaffold, the executioner Henri Sanson helped her ascend the daunting steps. In his subsequent account, Sanson reported a final, almost tender human exchange. She accidentally stepped on his foot as she climbed. Her last recorded words, uttered with an instinctive, quiet politeness, were, "Pardon me, monsieur, I did not do it on purpose." Moments later, at 12:15 p.m., the blade descended. The official execution protocol recorded the crowd's roar, a celebratory cry of "Long live the Republic!" But numerous observers, including the journalist Sébastien Mercier, noted a profound, unexpected silence that fell over the plaza the moment the act was completed. She was laid in a simple, unremarkable coffin and interred in an anonymous plot in the Cimetière de la Madeleine, alongside countless others who had met a condemned fate during the ensuing reign of terror. It was not until the Bourbon Restoration in 1815 that her remains were properly exhumed and finally placed in the Basilica of Saint-Denis, the traditional resting place of French royalty. This collapse of Marie Antoinette symbolized more than the tragic end of one royal life. It marked the shattering of an entire socio-political order founded upon divine right and inherited privilege. Her trial and final journey demonstrated history's chilling lesson. A revolution can consume its former symbols of power with the same speed and violence with which it created them. This video is created for educational and historical purposes. It examines themes of power, corruption, and human conflict without depicting explicit or graphic events. If this story made you reflect on fragility of power, stay with us for the next chapter. Walk further into history's shadows with us as we continue to trace the paths of those who ruled and those who fell.